Spring football practice is underway for the Georgia Bulldogs. Today marked the second day in pads for the Dogs, and this team has more questions than it's had in the last 5 years that Kirby Smart and his staff are going to have to figure out heading into the season. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post here, bringing you all of my spring practice observations. The media was allotted about 10 minutes. They let us see about 3 different periods of practice. I'm across the street from the facility right now. You can maybe hear Kirby Smart on the loudspeaker talking, yelling at his players, all of his little quips, getting under their skin, trying to get these guys ready. He said the other day in the opening press conference on Tuesday for spring practice, I want fire. I want to see the fire. That's what Kirby Smart wants. And look, he's been loud on the loudspeaker today. When the media was in there, he was actually about as tame as he gets when you get to see it. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. Look, where does your eyes go when you walk into the facility, when you walk in right across the street? It goes to the quarterbacks. Well, they were just showing us some drills today. They weren't showing us a ton of positional drills where you can see the depth chart, right? There are only a handful of positions where you can kind of get an idea of a little bit of a depth chart, and I will get to that. I've got my notes up. I've got an updated roster up for you guys. There's numbers, all of the early enrollees numbers, right? Georgia brought in a few wide receivers. Georgia signed a lot of defensive players in this class, but your eyes go to the quarterbacks first. Gunnar Stockton, it looks like he's taking the first team reps, right? From the drills that you can see and you can tell what's going on, it looks like Gunnar Stockton is QB1 for now, or at least that's what they were showing us. Kirby didn't really comment the other day on whether or not there was a quarterback competition. Essentially, he just said, look, there's competition at every single position. That's what you get at Georgia football. It's a competition at practice every single day, and the job's won in practice. We've seen it in the past. We've seen it with Stetson Bennett and JT Daniels. We've seen it with Carson Beck and Brock Vandagriff. We've seen it with Jake Fromm and Jacob Eason under Kirby Smart. So there's at least a little bit of a competition here, but it looks like Gunnar Stockton is QB1, and Ryan Puglisi, the second-year guy out of New England, out of Connecticut, looks like he is QB2 at the moment. I tried to pay attention to the receivers, right? Because, look, that is a position of contention for Georgia this season, right? They brought in new guys. Arian Smith and Dominic Lovett are out. Georgia had the most drops at that position in college football last year. It was a problem. It's something that hurt Georgia's momentum. It's something that hurt Georgia's drives. And in some games, it prevented them from scoring at a high level. We know Georgia's offense regressed from 2021 to 2023. That stretch where Georgia's averaging around 40 points per game, that dipped down to 32 points per game in 2024. So that looks very different. I got to look at the receivers, all right? Noah Thomas, he's the guy that stood out to me the most just by looking at them running through drills, and all I'm seeing is them running and catching short routes. It's nothing special. Ryan Montgomery, freshman quarterback that Georgia's brought in, he was the one throwing to him during these drills. That's the guy they had working with the receivers. But Noah Thomas, the length, they've got him listed at 6'5", tall, long. He is the most noticeable out of all the new receivers, and part of that is strictly because of size and length. And look, something Georgia lacked last season is an X receiver on the outside, a guy that can go up and get it. Why did they lack that? Well, their starting receivers for the most part last year were Dylan Bell, a pretty versatile guy that they like to use the slot, like to use in the run game, and a guy that's been around for a while. Dominic Lovett, kind of an inside receiver as well. And Arian Smith, a deep ball threat, not a big body target who had drop problems. They had Kobe Young. They had Ra Thomas. Georgia thought they had that heading into the season a year ago. This time, it seems like they'll have that again, but they didn't have that last season because Kobe Young gets suspended. He's off the team for a while. Ra Thomas gets kicked off the team. Georgia didn't really have that X receiver. They brought Noah Thomas in, the transfer from Texas A&M, to be that. He is very noticeable, the length, and look, he was going first in drills. He was going first in drills today. I don't know if that means he's wide receiver 1. It didn't look like you were getting a real depth chart out of Georgia's receivers when just watching these drills. But to me, he stood out the most, and it's because of the height and the length. And that is someone, whether it's Gunnar Stockton or Ryan Puglisi, and I think it's going to be Gunnar Stockton, he at least has the leg up on Puglisi, and he has the years in the program, and he has the faith of the coaching staff and the team. They need a guy like Noah Thomas. That's noticeable. Zachariah Branch, small guy. You can see the explosion. You can see the speed when comparing him to the rest. But another guy that stood out to me in these drills and someone that was kind of going first with Noah Thomas was Nitro Tuggle. He'll be a second-year guy. Didn't play a ton last year, but you saw him get into the games a little bit more as the year went on. You saw him get into that game in the Sugar Bowl against Notre Dame that Georgia ultimately lost. So He's a guy that I think is gaining momentum in this receiver room. Of course, you still got Dylan Bell. Like I said, Zachariah Branch. And I'll give you some of these numbers here in a few minutes. I'll wait to get through the rest of my notes and thoughts from what I saw during practice today to give you some of the new numbers. But yeah, I thought Noah Thomas stood out. Zachariah Branch, you can see the explosion just in these little drills. It's obvious. Running backs, Nate Frazier is operating as the running back 1. It looks like Cash Jones is operating as the running back 2 in these drills. All you can really see are simple handoff drills, simple cone drills, but Frazier's going first, Cash Jones is going second, and Chauncey Bowens was going third in the one that I saw. I can't have eyes everywhere. All of the positions are spread out. Got to go watch the offensive line, the defensive line, some of the other position groups, and I will round it out with the offensive line. I'll hit on offense. Obviously, I'm hitting on offense first. I'll get to defense in a second. Offensive line, hard to tell what the depth chart is there. They didn't really show us a lot, and if they did, it may have been when I wasn't looking. But to me, the only obvious two, just looking at the different groups they had mixed up in the different drills, the obvious 2 starters to me are Drew Bobo at center and Micah Morris at one of the guard positions. Otherwise, they were mixing some guys up. We know that Monroe Feeling dealing with injuries, some of these offensive linemen dealing with injuries. That gives an opportunity for Georgia and to figure out what they have in some of these younger guys. I wonder if you can hear me, Kirby Smart across the street screaming on that loud microphone. If you do, then you're welcome for that little treat there. So really hard to tell with the offensive line who the starters were, but to me it looks like Drew Bobo and Micah Morris are guys that they trust in that first unit, always first. They didn't really give us a 1 through 5 drill to look at, and like I said, if they did, it was when I wasn't looking. Tight ends. What I noticed was obviously Oscar Delp and Lawson Lucky are going first. Georgia's brought in a couple tight ends in this class, and in that second group, Jaden Riddell, freshman from last year, he was rolling, but the guy that was rolling with him was Ethan Barber. He's wearing number 9. He's one of the true freshmen. Georgia brought in 2 highly rated tight ends, Ethan Barber being one of them, Ellis Williams being the higher ranked guy. He's got a long frame, tall and long, 6'7" frame. He was going in the third group with Colton Heinrich, right? So Delp and Lucky, it looked like they were first, and then after that, it looked like Jaden Riddell, and then true freshman Ethan Barber. Defensive side of the ball. First, I was looking at the defensive linemen. I was looking at the edge rushers. Hard to tell in some of these drills, right? They're just doing drills where they're walking up and they're pushing up on pads, little stuff like that. Nothing where they're lining up like a defensive line across. What I did notice was coaches, the assistant coaches. The guy that they were getting into the most was true freshman Isaiah Gibson. He's wearing number 29. Like I said, I'll get to some of these numbers here at the end of this video. And look, make sure you're checking out the written version of this on the website, dawgpost.com. Make sure you're checking out the Red Zone. Make sure you're checking out our newsletter, just pumping all that out. But yeah, on the defensive line, specifically the edge rushers, the most noticeable was Isaiah Gibson. And part of that is just because he was getting coached up a lot. He was first in all of the little drills they were doing. So this is one of those years where Georgia lost a lot of sack production. They lost Mykel Williams. They lost Jalen Walker, Chaz Chambliss, guys like that. It might be a year where a freshman steps up and is a huge part of that. The edge rushers, the most noticeable to me, like I said, just because of what I was seeing and because of what I was hearing from the coaches, was Isaiah Gibson. Defensive line, hard to tell, right? But what does everyone want to see? They want to see what Elijah Griffin, 5-star guy out of Savannah Christian. They want to know about him. Look, Georgia's got a ton of big linemen on the defensive side of the ball. He wasn't going first in any drills or anything like that. He does look like a physical specimen, but when you look at all of them, they kind of all do. So I don't have a special note about Elijah Griffin, a guy that Dean and I went and saw play against Marist and didn't necessarily have a 5-star game, but the talent was evident, and he did make a few plays where it's like, oh, okay, I see it with Elijah Griffin. Moving on to linebackers. Raylan Wilson, CJ Allen, looks like those are your starters on the inside linebacker room. That's maybe the most obvious thing when you look at this Georgia football team this coming year. Second unit looked to be Chris Cole and Justin Williams, true freshman from last season. Chris Cole is a guy that ended up having production for Georgia, ended up being a guy that really helped them out. He scored a touchdown against UMass. He's a guy that I think can definitely be in this rotation and help out with Georgia this year. Moving on to defensive backs. Hard to tell what was going on with the safeties, but I did get a look at the corners. Dalen Everett, a guy that's going to be limited this spring, he's cornerback 1. And in drills for corners, the first unit was Dalen Everett and Daniel Harris, the guys that were the starting cornerbacks at the end of the season a year ago. In the second unit, it was 2 freshmen from last year. Ellis Robinson, the fourth, and DeMello Jones. Ellis Robinson, one of the highest rated recruits that Georgia has ever brought in. Ultra 5-star defensive back. Barely played last year. DeMello Jones played a little bit more than him in garbage time. Those were the guys that were running the second unit in the cornerback position drills. That's one of the big questions this spring and pretty much this whole offseason and heading into the season is, will Ellis Robinson crack the lineup? Well, he's got to fight with Daniel Harris for that, excuse me. I hope that I said that right a minute ago. He's got to fight with Daniel Harris for that. But look, just going back through my notes, some other things, right? I just kind of ran through everything that I can remember. A couple of other notes. I think that the receivers are the thing to be the most excited about heading into this year, partially because it was such an issue a season ago. When you think about Taylon Tabor, CJ Wiley in the freshman class, Zachariah Branch, Noah Thomas coming in as transfers. You still got Dylan Bell. You still got London Humphreys. You got Landon Rowland, another true freshman coming in. There's a lot to get excited about with this wide receiver room. And to me, that's the unit that I watched the most today. That's what stuck out to me. Got to look at Brett Thorson. He tore a ligament in his knee in that SEC championship game. The scar on the front and the side of his knee. Oh man, he had 2 long scars. I had knee surgery last year myself. I've got 2 tiny scars on my knee. I tore my meniscus. He obviously had a much more complicated operation done, but he's walking around, he's practicing, he looks good, and he looks like he's in good spirits. Kirby, kind of quieter when we were on the mic, but he was asking who set the tone in the running back room. He was pointing out Cash Jones. And another thing that he kept saying, and I've heard him say even when I started recording, is he hates a wasted rep. Sounds like there's been some wasted reps today. Kirby's not happy about that, but you know what he wants. Like he said the other day, he wants to see the fire. Those are my notes. Those are my practice observations for today. Hopefully we will get a couple more opportunities like this throughout the rest of the spring. But that's what I got for you today. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post. Thank you for watching.